Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipsson. Welcome to episode 147 of Sports Management Podcast. Today's guest is Ishveen Jolly, the CEO and founder at Open Sponsorship. Ishveen describes open sponsorship as an Airbnb for sponsorships, which connects brands to professional and collegiate athletes. In this episode, we spoke about why she founded Open Sponsorship, running a company in the US from the UK, sponsorship versus partnership, how to evaluate a successful sponsorship, how the Olympics impacts open sponsorship, the changes NIL brought to the sponsorship space, and much more. Ishveen Jolly, welcome to Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Marcus.
You are the CEO and founder of Open Sponsorship. So can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, so Open Sponsorship started about 8 years ago. Essentially, we are a marketplace connecting brands with sponsorship opportunities within the sports and entertainment space, predominantly athletes, but we do a bit of work with team and events and other types of influencers. And really the objective is that sponsorship marketing is a wonderful form of marketing that sometimes is not so efficient and data-driven and ROI effective. And we want to change all of that and make partnerships meaningful, scalable, cost-effective, and ROI-driven.
Fantastic. So you have said that Open Sponsorship is like an Airbnb for sponsorships. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so when you think about Airbnb, you've got two sides, and really those two sides would never connect if it wasn't for this amazing platform. Same thing for us. So we have over 20,000 athletes and 50% managed by agents, 50% direct. And then we have hundreds, in fact, thousands of brands, and we want them to find each other based on, demographic data, aligned interests, the correct price points versus budget range. So yeah, it's a connecting tool.
I see. So what was the reason for why you started it?
I used to be a sports agent doing more traditional sponsorship deals, and I loved it, but I found the process quite grueling. Sometimes anyone who's been in sponsorship will definitely feel my pain, where you'd be working on a deal, you'd speak to someone, they say, no, I'm not, I used to work in cricket, I'm not doing any cricket. And then 3 months later, they would do a deal with a different team, a competitor to you. And you were like, wait, how did that happen? And so, and it was always kind of so difficult to know who was in the market and even who had money based on what you were selling. So I loved the deal. I loved the experience afterwards, the brand's delight in getting all of these benefits and assets. I just thought the deal making could be more simple.
You mentioned you have over 20,000 professional athletes in, I think, 160 sports all around the world, 120 countries. So how has this expansion been like since you started it in 2015?
Yeah, so obviously just got bigger and bigger. It's been pretty organic. So I can't really say there was a year that we figured everything out. Especially because athletes, once they sign up, they stay in the roster. So every time there's an Olympics, we have a big push to get more Olympians on. A couple of years ago in America, within the college space, there was a rule change allowing college athletes to essentially do sponsorship deals for the first time. And that's a huge market in America. So that led to a good few thousand adding on. And then internationally, we got more famous. So now we have, I think about 500 athletes based out of the UK and a similar number across Europe and Australia. So it's just really organically grown as we've progressed.
I see. So what you mentioned there with the college athletes, obviously is NIL, name, image, and likeness. So except for adding some more athletes to your roster, what else has that impacted you?
Not really. I mean, obviously there's a few fields, so suddenly college becomes important, graduation date becomes important. So on the platform, there were a few changes. Obviously, we had the additional athletes. On the brand side, it did open us up to maybe doing a bit more regional stuff. Colleges could be very localized. So, where there's no professional teams, the college could be the most famous sports team in the vicinity. And so it kind of maybe opened us up to a few different brands. The rules changes were hard because it was very like, what can they do? What can't they do? But we suffer with that in the Olympics and the NFL and all of our other major leagues anyway.
I see. So what services do you offer on open sponsorship on the platform?
So essentially you could think of as a little bit like a matchmaking like platform, like a Match.com. So the platform itself is great for matching. The main way that we do that is you could think of it as a bit like a recruitment site where on one hand, a brand could come in. So an athlete will list themselves and the brand can come in and search. Show me all the athletes in Miami who have at least 50% following and have 10% engagement rate and have kids, for example. Or they also cost less than $5,000. So you can do all your searches like you could on a recruitment site to find the best candidate. But really the best thing that most recruitment sites do is the brand will put up a campaign, a bit like a job posting. So, a brand will come in and they'll say, looking for athletes who drink tequila. We want to gift you a bottle of tequila. Also, we want to pay you $500 in exchange for a social media post or come to this event or create a video for us that we can use in our paid advertising. So essentially the campaign goes up and our athletes and agents will apply. So that's what the platform does. The big change for us has been over the last few years, we realize that people are overworked, they don't have time, and they also really want human connectivity. I don't need another login. What I need is like community or a nice person to speak to. And so we really amplified what we call our full service, our white glove service. And that's been really, so when you talk about offering, the platform's amazing, but really a lot of brands are saying, hey, I want the eventual thing, but could you just help me do it? Can you tell me, especially given influencer marketing and digital is changing so fast, suddenly it's like, well, should I be on YouTube or Instagram? Should I do reels or stories? Should I drive conversions or should I be doing brand awareness? And so I think what people appreciate is we've got the network and we've got the data and we've got all of that, but we also really help with a human touch and strategy as well.
Interesting. And you mentioned that influencer marketing and of course, you mentioned being on social media, you can make some posts for these brands, but let's say you're an athlete, you're an introvert, you're not really comfortable to be in the spotlight. How can they still leverage your platform?
Yeah, it's tough. It's sad, I think, philosophical conversation. I think in every industry, you branding yourself and whether it's professional, LinkedIn, athletes, it might be Instagram, has become a necessity. So I hear you, but I think it's tough because it has become the way that you've been judged value. Now, of course, there's still speaking opportunities. We don't do as much of them. I think they're not as prevalent as it is because it's so easy for me to send you product and you do something on social. I would say if you're quite introverted and you don't want to post about yourself, but you don't mind creating content. So a lot of brands are quite happy to get UGC that they put on their own channels. So that's an option. And then anything else, even like event appearances, like we do things where, a brand might be sponsoring a expo or a conference and they'll ask an athlete to come. It kind of all relies on it. So I fear that most of sponsorship is driven by an athlete having an outward persona.
So I saw that there is approximately a 70-30 split with men to women ratios on the platform, but it's almost exactly a 50-50 split in terms of deals. Could that have to do with that women usually are a little bit better with social photography and so on?
Yeah, I'd say definitely that. Also maybe better value. So also great engagement rates. Maybe the audience is more engaged with everything they put out, whereas maybe with the men, it's like, I follow you because I like you on the court, but I'm maybe not as interested off court. So I feel like there's a few different reasons, but yeah, good observation. We love our female athlete deals.
We are in an Olympic year now. So does that change a little bit how you work? Maybe, try to focus more on Olympic athletes, bring more Olympic athletes in and so forth.
Yeah, I think so definitely. And the hard thing with the Olympics is A, there's a lot of new athletes. B, then there's the Olympic trials. So you don't really know who's going to get into the Olympics until the trials. There's a lot of big names who don't make it. So it's always moving. And then because it's every 4 years, there's so many new rules. So this year, for the first time, you can actually take products into the village with you. You can't actively promote them, but you can like be pictured with them and you can like thank your sponsors. So the rules keep changing as the Olympics has to keep up with like the, modern times.
What would you say is the key to a successful sports sponsorship?
As a brand or as an athlete?
From both sides.
I'd say one is authenticity. And ironically, maybe like the best way to get authenticity is to get the right price. So if you are overpaying, you are probably buying the athlete. Whereas actually what we try and do is get like the best market rate for both sides. And therefore the athlete's like, cool, I would like more money, but I will do it at this rate because I like the brand. And so I think authenticity is a key because ROI is the ultimate goal and I is investment. So, did you spend the right amount of money? And when there's authenticity, then the brand can trust that the athlete will deliver the right messaging. And so sometimes you get brands who are too strict, and then sometimes you get brands who are too lax. And I think the perfect combination is someone who's like, I know your product already. I know why I like it. So yeah, I'd say authenticity is key. And then for the athlete to be able to produce good content. Now, we do have a lot of athletes who use friends, partners, professionals to shoot the content. So it doesn't mean that you have to be a good content creator, but you have to ultimately produce good content, whether you or through a third party.
That's very interesting. And the authenticity part, I think, is really key that you said there, because, and that leads me also to like sponsorship versus partnership. Maybe if you overpay, it's more of a sponsorship. You sponsor someone, you pay someone to do something. While if you are more on a market rate, it's more of a partnership.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
If we talk about monetization from your end, first of all, like how you funded this company in the first place, and then as a second part, how are you monetizing the platform?
Yeah. So, we went through an accelerator, 500 startup out of San Francisco. So that obviously helped because we able to raise some money. Today, the way that we monetize is we charge our brands a subscription to be on the platform. It could be low as, sometimes we even give startups like $200 a month. So it could be really low. Our sweet spot is more in the like kind of $1,500 to $2,000 a month. And that's where you get the services and everything with you, like a fully white glove service. So we charge our brands and then we take a percentage. It's free for the athletes to sign up. We take a percentage of the deal depending on the size. And the main reason why we set up that model is it's very important that, we talked about brands putting up campaigns. It's very important that athletes are not applying to campaigns that are never going to get done. And so during COVID, we actually made the platform free because we really just wanted to help everyone do deals. We knew athletes needed money. We knew brands were hurting. But what happened is we got a lot of brands coming in who weren't serious about fulfilling. And that just wastes everyone's time. So we really like our model now because it's a vetting process and it optimizes for deal flow as well.
Talking about the fundraising, I mean, there are pretty big names that's backing this project, if you want to mention a few of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we were really lucky that we, in our most recent round, we raised our lead investors were Serena Williams, so her venture fund, Serena Ventures, and David Blitzer, his venture fund, Bolt Ventures, and he owns, I think he now has a record for the most teams in different leagues. So he's got like 4 or 5 in America, I believe. I mean, you've probably done your research more. 1 in the UK, and I don't know where else. Maybe elsewhere in Europe.
Yeah. And also co-owner Crystal Palace and Philadelphia 76ers. I mean, it's huge names.
Yeah, exactly.
That speaks to your mission, I guess, too, that they see the value in this company as much as you do.
Yeah.
With that said, what's in the future now? Are you looking ahead for open sponsorship?
Yeah, I think, driving revenue and growth is huge for us. Getting the right types of brands in, doing as many athlete deals. I mean, it's more of the same, but more efficiently. So working on marketing, figuring out inbound even more. So just more of the same. We really love our mission. We love putting money into the hands of athletes and having brands turn around and say, wow, it's so wonderful that we were able to do these campaigns and they delivered results for us.
Interesting. Last one on the open sponsorship. We talked about the authenticity and what makes a great partnership, but after the deal, when you evaluate, what are some, data points or some factors that you can look at and evaluate if this was successful or not?
Yeah, so usually you break it down into engagement metrics and then sales metrics. So of course, like engagement metrics are easier because we can control them. So that's how many people viewed the post, how many people liked, comment, shared, engaged with it, how many people clicked on any links to go to the website. So everything that's on the social media platform, we can view, we track, we automate, and we can kind of control. What becomes hard for us is obviously the other side, which is what everyone wants, which is the sales. So because, once they get to your site, well, did they convert? Well, that depends on your funnels, your pricing being right, your website being right. But of course, we try and help with strategies for that. And the other part of that is like, it might be the organic post itself from the athlete might deliver X, but then amplifying that, using the name, image, likeness of the athlete or that content in marketing emails, that's going to help. Using it on your website, going to help. Using it in PR, going to help. So it's taking this and like doing more with it to hopefully get that ROI.
So I'm interested in your background and how you got into sports in the first place. So I know that you're born in Sheffield, raised in Manchester. So from there, you mentioned you were an agent, but how did the interest for sports start? How did you get into the industry?
Yeah, I basically played sports like my whole life growing up. It was, every summer I wanted to just be in sports camp and every team I wanted to be on. And then I studied at Oxford and I played sports as much as possible there. I captained a couple of sports teams at my college. Came out, I was a management consultant for a few years, but frankly, like I just spent my whole day waiting to get out and play netball or whatever else. And so I think sports was a huge part of my life. I loved playing it. In hindsight now, obviously, I love the skill set it gave me and the person it made me. And so when it came to a few years after graduation, and I really thought, well, what do I want? What am I really passionate about? It was sports. So I never really had thought about being in the business of sports or working in it as an industry, but it was just how important it was to me kind of took over.
You said that in hindsight, you liked the skills that it gave you participating in sport. What are some of those skills?
Yeah, I think I once heard a formidable woman in the UK soccer football scene give a speech, and she said that growing up she had three parents: her mother, her father, and sports. And kind of was like, oh, I feel the same way. So I think it teaches you how to fail, which as a startup founder, like you have to be very, very okay with like failing all the time, getting things wrong, teamwork. So, and I do think there's a difference between individual sports and maybe I played a lot of team sports. So I think teamwork was huge. Leadership, whether I was captaining or just if there's only 7 people on the netball team, you're all leaders in some shape or form. Obviously communication, like work ethic. If you tell me now, yeah, I used to wake up at 6:30 to go to school every day. It was a long commute. And on Saturdays, I would wake up and play netball at 9 o'clock. Like if you told me now, like you chose to do that, I'd be like, that's crazy. I presume I wanted to lie in. But so I think there's so many things that you do at the time and then you look back and you're like, oh, that probably came from there. Meritocracy, I think is huge. I've often joked about this. When I was at school, like I still there, wear like big geeky glasses. I've got long hair. Obviously, I'm Indian, and I feel like when you're on the court, it doesn't matter what you look like, who you are going to be judged on talent. And there's not that many places that you can say that. And so I never really thought about my background or being a woman or any of those things in my early career because sports made me not think about any of those things.
Yeah. There is another formidable quote that I've heard that I don't remember who said it first now, but it's girls who play sports become women who lead.
Oh, love it.
So yeah, and the interest started when you were young, playing catch with your father as well, and then captaining the netball team,
Yeah.
and from there, and then until you became an agent. How was that?
Yeah, so I was a management consultant for a few years, and I did love it, and I actually think I credit a lot of like the success I had to those early years in a corporate environment. learning how to write good emails, learning how to do PowerPoint, Excel, Microsoft Access at that point. And so I think sometimes sports it's definitely getting better, and it's becoming a lot more of a regular industry that nurtures you and trains you. But there can be a tendency to think that like you enter into sports too young and you might not have like some grassroots, like some basic skill set. So I loved my time. Yeah, I loved wearing a suit and whatever else. But sometimes it's also good to like have experienced different things to know what you're giving up. And therefore you're not always thinking, oh, I want to do something else. So I feel like I did the corporate life. And then, I'm sure you know, I moved to India actually. So when I joined the sports world, it's at the same time I moved to India in 2009. So it's a huge change. And I definitely wouldn't have been ready for it straight after university. I was ready for it when I was, which was still quite young. But yeah, it was amazing.
So what was the biggest change? Was it cultural or business-wise, or what was the biggest change?
Absolutely everything. It was like, I went from going to an office 5 days a week, sitting behind a computer with my headphones on, cranking away with numbers mostly, or PowerPoints or whatever else, surrounded by people like me who were wearing suits, and you took a 1 hour lunch break and you finished at 6 and you went for a drink in the pub or whatever else. So I went from that to, India, the culture is like you work. I mean, we work Saturdays, which is insane. And then obviously I'm working in sports, so there's no weekends. I basically spent my whole time working on my BlackBerry on my phone. I'm sure there were days that I didn't even open a laptop. So I think it was like the work was different. Obviously, I'm in sales now. I'm selling sponsorship, something I've never even heard of before. So that was different. The industry was different. The culture was different. The attitude towards women was obviously different. So I'd say all of it was almost like a full 180.
A question I always ask women on this podcast is that the sports is a male-dominated field, although, it's getting better. But what is your experience from being a woman in a male-dominated industry like sports?
Yeah, I'd say, there's the peers. So selling to peers, like there's managing downwards and then there's upwards, like raising money. So there's like three different aspects. So the raising money, I'd say, was like definitely a little bit harder because also, I raised in America where I started the company, and I've got a British accent, and obviously I don't look the part. And so not only am I female, but I'm talking about disrupting the NFL, and I haven't even lived that. So I can imagine, I empathize with that. So I think that was like a little bit harder, but at the same time, I was lucky that sports is a field that a lot of people are very passionate about. And so we've got great investors because it's an interesting area that people like want to be involved in. And then of course, like I wouldn't even have Serena Ventures if it wasn't for the fact that I was like female or minority and whatever else. So, there's so many pluses and minuses. I think on the peer side, of course, there are times when it's intimidating if you're at a conference and it gets to 1 a.m. and everyone's drinking and you think maybe I should go home now, whereas if maybe I was a guy, I'd feel more comfortable staying out. But at the same time, I think I've had a lot of male champions around me who've helped to uplift me and introduce me. And so that's been really nice. And then the managing downwards, I think that's definitely one of the big challenges. I think it's much better now, but if I was someone's first female boss, then sometimes it could be hard because I think criticism from a woman is harder, even if it is your CEO, than it is from a male. Or, that kind of, I'm sure you've heard the cliche, like she's called a bitch and he's called a boss and, whatever else. And so I think sometimes that has been a bit more challenging. But again, the flip side of that is I've also loved the fact that I can give opportunity to women who love working for a female, and like we bond in different ways. So I definitely would say I've loved the male and the female aspect. So I think I'm really lucky for that.
I see. So yeah, you mentioned the offices in the US, you're running it from the UK. So the time difference between UK and US is between, 6 to 9 hours where you are, depending on different states and so forth. So how is it like running a company from UK in the US?
Yeah. So my team works East Coast time and I'm in London. So luckily it's 5 hours for me. It's definitely a challenge in some respects, but I'm quite a glass half full kind of person. And I'd say there's something quite nice about having the mornings to myself, doing a few hours work before it gets busy. And then my 2 till 8 p.m. is chock-a-block meetings. So the challenge is if I have to run off and then afterwards I don't get time, but then I'll just do it the next morning. So I think in a way, if I worked a typical day, I'd be in meetings all day. Whereas this way, there is naturally a period of time where I'm not in meetings. And that's quite useful to actually get work done.
I understand that, but it also prolongs the day a little bit.
Yeah, but I'm quite a night owl anyway. And so, yeah, it definitely has like impeded certain areas of my life, but it is what it is. You make it work.
As the CEO and founder of a startup, being an entrepreneur, what are some skills needed to do what you do?
Resilience. So talk about failure and, the wins are great, but there's a lot of ups and downs. 2 would be an attitude of like, I'm going to like a problem solving attitude. So, if you can't solve it, then no one else can. And maybe sometimes the way that you solve it is by leaning on the right team members, but you have to initiate that solve. So I think like problem solving a lot, being definitely a jack of many things. So, we talked about fundraising and hiring and managing. And for me, I'm not technical, so I don't code, but sales and thinking about products and account management. So there's so many divisions that are reporting up to me. So you can't just be like, I'm going to do one thing. You do need to being very passionate about what you do and making sure that passion transfers across the whole team is really important, because ultimately we're all working for the mission of what we do. And yeah, I think probably those are main view.
That's good ones. And you mentioned that there is not only good times, of course, there are also harder times. So can you mention some, bumps in the road in your career and how you overcame them?
Obviously, like anytime day to day where you have setbacks, like a client leaves, we call it churn in software world. Like that's obviously annoying and hard, and you feel like, what could I do better? But then that's also the opportunity to go, okay, well, what can I do better? And then you've got a more sustainable business model. So that's what led to a lot of our decision to go white glove. Is we decided we needed to give people more support than just the platform. Raising money was hard, even though we got great names and we got there. Of course, you get many no's along the way. That's the nature of the beast. People, it's so gratifying when you have a great team, and we have a great team, but along the road, we've had people leave ours, we've had to let people go. And so that's definitely one of the most personal, hardest things of running a company, but also very gratifying.
So how do you overcome that? A client leaving, you might take it personal. It hits you financially, emotionally. So how do you move on from that?
We talked about resilience. Like, I think you need to just stay in the middle and say it is what it is. And I think the focus should be on the learning out of it. So if you delve into the outcome, you can't change that. But what I can understand is that, well, why did that happen? Okay, is this a trend? Can I document it? So I think by naturally going into process mode and fixing problem solving more so, you turn it into action. And I think the best way to get over something is not stay in the rut, but like turn into action, and then hopefully your actions will deliver success.
I like that. We spoke before we hit record here about that there are a lot of young people or young people in the industry who listen to this podcast. So what is some advice that you have for young people who want to work in sports?
I think the job market is tough. Well, it depends where you are, but generally I think it's tough. So I'd say get a job, do well in whatever role you're in. I'd love to see, when we're hiring, I love to see someone being promoted. It's important to me that you've proven success in one role, in one company, even if you've changed positions and stuff. So I'd say, get a job, build up skill sets, build up goodwill. Every skill is useful. You're going to use, even if it's just the art of learning. And I'd say keep an eye on the sports world, but your career is long. It's okay if you don't get into it when you're 21 or 22. Like, you'll get there when you're 26, 27. You can also similar to you're doing, Marcus, you can make something in sports your side hustle alongside your main job. So start a podcast, start a blog, start a social media page. And I think a lot of people, execs today, we're relying on consultants, freelancers, creatives. We don't need it to be full time, but maybe that's the way the world is going. So I'd say if someone says to me, I'm really passionate about blogging around sports, I'd be like, cool, so where's your blog? So I think do it because you can, and it's cheap, easy, and it's never been more easy to do that. So it's hard to say like what jobs will be available. And also, like, I do think an element of my success, and I think a lot of people's success, are you good at sales? So I think sometimes people shy away from a sales job, but actually selling is everything. Even hiring, finding a job is selling, raising money is selling, hiring people is selling. So if you can get the opportunity to learn how to do sales.
I think that's amazing advice. And what you said with the side hustle, so important. I mean, as you said, nowadays with the internet, I mean, this podcast doesn't cost a lot. It has a startup cost, buying a microphone and so forth. Then the maintenance is so low, but you get so much out of it, the networking and the skill sets that you get, and what you said, blogging or social media page that you can start that literally doesn't cost you anything. And then I talked to Andrew Brandt, an NFL executive, former, who he also said that, like, what do you have to show for it? So what you said there, I love blogging. Where's your blog? If you have something like you want to apply for a social media job, okay, I have this page that I started and it grew this much in X amount of years. So you can really show your skill sets.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there something I haven't asked you yet that you feel is important to mention?
Oh, I thought you've done a great job.
Thank you so much. So then before I let you go, the last question that I ask everyone is, who from your network do you think would be a good guest on this podcast?
We just came back off from our annual company offsite in New Orleans. And my board member is a former SVP of Disney, ESPN, and he's lighthearted and funny and has great stories. And I think sometimes when you're speaking to people like me in the midst of things, we can be quite serious and very like, do this and do that. And, whereas like sometimes I think there's also joy probably for listeners to just hear funny stories from the past. Obviously there's a learning in them, but just fun stories. So I'd say someone like him who has no agenda and isn't in the midst of it, is a bit more lighthearted and just has fun stories.
Yeah. Who was that?
His name's Sean Hanrahan.
That's a good guest.
There you are.
Ishveen, thank you so much for taking the time to be on Sports Management Podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought about this episode. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram @sportmpodcast.